the work that he's been doing with Seeability. And we're very lucky to have the Seeability CEO, Lisa Hopkins, here today, as well as Emily Stewart, who's a member of the steering group. Guys, can Scott, I know you've got access to be able to share your screen. Would you like to start put your slides up and start presenting?
I can do that indeed. My pleasure. Okay, so let me just, oops. Okay, slideshow. Oh my God, why has it gone back to the end? Okay, let me start it from the current slide. Hate technology. Oh, okay, hold on. There we go. Let's do it that way. Sorted. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Daniel, for that that lovely introduction. I feel you put me on a pedestal now, and now I've got to feel I got to feel my shoes in feel the boots of being able to achieve what to go through what we've achieved. So yes, so this afternoon we're going to talk to you about investing in people with learning disabilities in leadership roles and why that is so important. And I'm going to, I'm going to talk to you around our Seeabilities engagement plan, and I hope you'll find it useful and you'll be able to model some of this in your own organisations as well. So let me just introduce you to introduce myself and my colleagues to you. So I'm Scott Watkin, BEM, and I'm Head of Engagement at Seeability. Lisa, do you want to go next?
As I said earlier, and I think I misplaced, I shouldn't have spoken earlier, that was for a different Lisa. So I realize now there's another Lisa on the video who is actually a member of the steering group, so a bit disingenuous. But I'm Lisa Hopkins, Chief Exec at Seeability. Apologies for the error earlier.
And Emily?
I'm Emily Stewart, influencer at Seeability and working with Scott.
Great, thank you, Emily. And so before we go into the slides, I just wanted to give you a bit of my background and why that I'm and why that this why I've got to do this work and to lead a team of people with learning disabilities, lived experience to get to achieve and to have a bigger voice within for themselves and externally and within Seeability. So I was back in 2009, I was the co-national director for learning disabilities, where I represented everybody with a learning disability throughout the country, and took their views and voices and made their voices heard in government and spoke to ministers for the Department of Health. And then I moved to MENCAP, and I was the inclusion advisor at MENCAP, and supported the work around how MENCAP could be more inclusive. And then in 2013, I came to Seeability. I started out as an eye care and vision development officer, and then got a promotion to take on in 2019 head of engagement, to lead my own team to write my own strategy and to being able to make sure that the people that we support at Seeability have their voices heard. I'm also a trustee for Trelaws College in Oldham, and I'm very proud that I've just taken that role on as well. And I am a visiting lecturer for the University of Hertfordshire on the Learning Disability Nursing course. And actually, one of my and I received my British Empire Medal because of services to people with learning disabilities, and which was also very amazing, and I never thought I would get to where I am today. So I'm very lucky to be in the role that I'm in. So about Seeability. So who we are. So Seeability are support people with learning disabilities, autism and sight loss within to live independent lives every single day, and to break down those barriers to make sure that everybody that we support can achieve to be independent and to have their voice heard. So we have residential care homes, we have supported living, and we have activity centres all across the south of England, all the way up from Wellington in Somerset, going up to Bristol, down over to Kent, down to up to Surrey, and over to Oxford and Aylesbury. And so our mission is to be able to make sure that people with learning disabilities, autism and sight loss achieve everything they want to do. And so we've been we want everybody, we want and our values are about making sure that we do what is right and being brave and actually stepping out of our comfort zones as well, so everybody has their voices heard. Okay, so okay, so the engagement plan. So I'm going to talk to you about the plan and the strategy, and why we wanted to do this. So my background has always been around self-advocacy and making sure that people with learning disabilities get their voice heard, not only within the organisation, but actually externally as well. And I've always been a campaigner, and for me to take this role on was a massive achievement. And it was and actually it wasn't just ticking a box, it was thinking right outside of that box and being able to make sure that people with learning disabilities and autism and sight loss achieved and was having their voice heard, and within the organisation externally, but actually people themselves were having their voice heard. So this is all about making sure that people had a stronger voice, had the leadership skills, and were mentored and were able to do their role in the way that to do their role in the way that they wanted to do it as well. And actually it's also about making sure that we at Seeability, that people we support were telling us about what we could do and differently, and to challenge us as an organisation too. So So as you can see that I think I've summarised the first box quite well in the plan now. So my reflections were that people we support needed training and needed to have the support to being able to achieve, to go and speak at conferences, to go and sit at government meetings, and to being able to have their voice heard. But also it was also about actually for people to be really, really independent and to being able and actually for us as an organisation that that it was preparing them for what they were going to say, but actually it was their words. So I set up the Seeability Associate Programme, which is essentially the engagement plan. So in year one, I appointed 3 associates who are volunteers, and I taught them the skills around making sure that they could have their voice heard, exposing them to different leaders within the organisation, but also externally. So I'd invite people like Gary Boulay in to talk to people, to talk to the team, and I asked Lisa and Sam Clark from LDE to do leadership sessions with the team as well, and so they learned the skills by being exposed to people, and actually I coached them all the way through that. And then in year 2, one of those people, one of the associates, were offered the role, had to go through a full interview process, and that interview process was not an easy process, but we made all the reasonable adjustments for the person for the interviews, and they all applied for the interviews for the influencer role, and this year I successfully appointed, and that influencer role is a paid role, and Emily will talk more about that in a moment, about what she's achieved. And then I also recruited another 4 associates this year to my team, so now I have a team of 7, and my other 2 associates who did not get the influencer role, I promoted them to being associate mentors, so they could support the new associates to learn the skills that they need and be mentors for those people, for the other associates. And then so how did it work? So we got feedback from, to develop this plan, I got feedback from our Taking Control group, and I evidenced our work that we were doing and reported on what we were achieving. But I also made sure that we were going to be out there speaking at conferences, our Taking Control group, and making sure that we were having an impact on our work regionally, locally and nationally. And we did our and actually it was built around co-production. And so the other bit I did was I also talked to other organisations, and I knew that actually there was nothing like this out there at the time, and so I really wanted this to be a first for people, and people have achieved. So it's an achievement that the team achieved in the first year. So we had the general election with, and so the team, one of the first things the team did, they wrote the mini manifesto, not only for us as an organisation, but actually we did that externally as well. So it was so we publicly put our manifesto out there, and that was written by the associates. We joined a pavement parking campaign. We supported the NHS to make the NHS track and trace app accessible as well. And we internally, we spoke at our Taking Control group. We have spoken at government meetings, and we have spoken in the media as well. And we did advise the BBC on what news disabled people wanted to listen to and throughout the pandemic. And we've done several lectures at universities, and we've delivered some workshops for other organisations too. So I'm proud of this team, because actually they've achieved so much and over exceeded my expectations, because actually what we've done here, we've thought outside the box and not inside and not just ticked a box, and I believe anybody can achieve. So I want to introduce Emily now. Emily, could you tell us what your role is?
Okay, so my role is influencer, which means I will influence government on issues. Scott's already chosen my favourite one, pavement parking, and I will help the associates and associate mentors to have a bigger voice, because there's no point just sitting there and agreeing with something that we don't like. It's about challenging those situations.
Thank you, Emily. And so what have you achieved in your role so far?
Sorry, are you talking this role or altogether?
Altogether. So
okay. I've written blogs on the pandemic. As Scott's already touched on the mini manifesto, but some of those issues, like the pavement parking and access, came up in that mini manifesto. I've been sitting in on meetings with the nursing, the, can't think of the word. I know what I'm trying to say, I just can't find it.
The community of practice.
That's the one, yeah, that's it. And we did a talk for the
University of Kingston.
That's it. Sorry, Scott, I knew what I wanted. Cheers. Yeah, we did a talk on the did a talk for the University of Kingston, in which I was explaining about my recent stay in hospital, basically to give them some idea of what it was like during COVID, because I have a visual impairment. So it was a bit of a change and a challenge, but I got there.
Yeah. And Emily, what would you like to see change for people with learning disabilities?
I would like people with learning disabilities to be able to have a bigger voice, be understood, achieve their full potential in whatever way works for them. Because I think just because you've got a learning disability or autism doesn't mean you can't strive or achieve anything.
And Emily, one more question from me. What is your greatest achievement to date within your work and your role?
Gaining more confidence, saying it as it is, not holding back, challenging things that I don't agree with.
Okay, thank you, Emily. And it's great to see Emily with so much more confidence and to achieve the skills that Emily has achieved. So that's just simply amazing. Well, I think so anyway. I'm now going to pass over to Lisa, who's going to talk about why should we invest in people with learning disabilities.
Thanks, Scott. It's tough to follow Emily and Scott, you know. Emily, there's some really lovely comments in the chat about how fabulous your work is and cheering you on. Here, Emily, it says. So thought you'd like to hear that. So I suppose our starting point at Seeability is that we believe that people with learning disabilities can be empowered, influential leaders, and they bring a sense of authenticity, integrity, uniqueness, and added value to our organization. I'd seen these kinds of roles in other organizations, as well as we see them in central government, don't we? But there was a lot of rhetoric around what was being done and how people were influencing. And I felt like that was resulting in tokenism to a large extent, and I wanted to do it differently here. So there's so many benefits that people with learning disabilities bring to an organization, particularly when they're in senior roles. Scott sits on our leadership team. He's very influential throughout the organization. When they're in senior roles with an opportunity to influence, to truly influence, I think that's when you see real change happen. And people with learning disabilities obviously have a significant range of viewpoints, skills, and competencies, but it's as a result of the challenges that they face and the barriers that they face throughout their life that they bring that unique journey that's only their experience. I can't begin to relate to that because my life journey is quite different. And what I found at Seeability is we need to hear that story and we need it permeating throughout the organization at all levels. So because of that challenge that people with learning disabilities face, you know, that the constant fight for equality, they have often developed many core empowerment and leadership skills. And those include empathy, emotional intelligence, communication, planning, strategizing, and rapport building, all of which are critical for great leadership and being great influencers. And I've also found that this group have an appreciation and awareness of their own strengths and weaknesses, probably because they've been assessed to death, you know, and so-called professionals have come in and done so many reports on their skills. But Scott and his team have a real self-awareness around what their strengths are and what their continuing professional development needs are. And I often don't see that in our non-disabled colleagues. Which sometimes I wish we would, but that's a real advantage to have in this team. And whilst this group are very extremely diverse, they also share a more inclusive perception of society. And that's fabulously contagious in an organization like ours. We have about 800 colleagues at Seeability. And when you have this group of people who are so powerful and inspirational, and believe to their core about what can be achieved when people with learning disabilities are valued and included, that lifts up the whole organization to be more ambitious for people's lives and to ensure that people are properly included and properly contributing to their communities and active citizens. And so we've seen that really flourish over the last couple of years since Scott started this program. This group have a more insightful understanding of the impact of exclusion. And so because of that impact, they're able to relate to prejudice, discrimination, and the challenges of life, and they won't tolerate that in our organization or outside the organization, and that's particularly powerful. For me, for us as an organization, this team, these roles aren't about trying to do the right thing or being seen to be doing the right thing. It's purely selfish. This is about diversity of thought, and that's invaluable in an organization like ours. They bring authentic inspiration to leadership throughout the charity. And that ideology is focused on their ability to achieve, contribute, and lead. So in our organization, as I said, Scott sits on our leadership team. He's expected to contribute in the same way as everyone else, all of the members of our leadership team. He and the rest of his crew tell us the truth. They don't hold back. They tell us where we're getting it wrong. They tell us what needs to change. And sometimes that's tough to hear, but it absolutely steers us in the right direction and makes sure our compass is always pointed towards the benefit of the people we're here to serve. So this kind of place, and it's still in its early years, does take additional investment. It's often taken a very different management style. And so managers need to be very open to being flexible and listening to what people need, perhaps even more so than for our non-disabled colleagues. But that payoff is really worth it. When people with disabilities are included at senior levels, then I think not only does our organization benefit through that diversity of viewpoint, but society as a whole benefits from their talents, their knowledge, their skills, their life journeys, and their unique contributions. So it's the team, and can't wait to see what they continue to do over the next few years.
Thank you, Lisa. So I want to summarize this all up. It's for us, it's about thinking outside the box as a team. It's about being showing that more people with learning disabilities should be in leadership roles, in senior roles, and actually not underestimating us, because actually we can achieve just like anybody else, and with the right support and thinking, not just ticking a box, but thinking outside the box, and you'll get a greater diversity of a team, and you'll get greater challenge, and actually it is about accepting challenge and accepting that, actually about having an honest and giving the truth about things. So actually, if you get it right for people with learning disabilities, you get it right for everybody. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Lisa, I can see you've got your hand up. I can see Carrie's got her hand up as well. Oh no, those are claps, aren't they?
It was a clap, but I did have a question myself, if that's all right, Daniel.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think it's clear that everyone's found the talk today really, really inspirational, shall we say. And I think that's great, but I also think, well, what a shame, because it means that this isn't embedded enough in other organisations where even more influence and benefit could be gained. And so I just wondered whether the team are connecting up with any other organisations for people with learning disabilities to sort of share the way you're working and so encourage them to go on the same journey as you, really.
So I mean, Lisa, you might want to pitch in here, but this is the first time we've spoken publicly about the plan, because it's the first time we've been really asked to talk about it. And actually, I get asked in outside of work, how can we do co-production better on social media and things like that, and get asked to talk about that. But actually it is about showing the potential of what people with learning disabilities can bring to other organisations, to being able to get their voice heard, and to support other organisations to be inclusive and to work in an inclusive way. I've been very lucky at Seeability that I've been able to achieve this, and really challenge and to make that challenge happen. And that's because I have colleagues around me that support and really understand the agenda, the agenda and what we're trying to achieve as a team. And I have been in other organisations where that hasn't happened as well, and sometimes it's like hitting your head against a brick wall. I've got to be honest, but actually working at Seeability and being in the leadership group and to being able to challenge, it is like a breath of fresh air, because I'm able to just say it and I can be very honest about it.
I think you're absolutely right. It's really sad that we're celebrating this in 2021. You know, we've, as a country, have been talking about inclusion for so long, and making sure decisions are taken by the right people. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a shame that we're in this position. And as Scott said, we haven't done any other talks about it because we wanted to walk it before we could talk it. And the team have now been in place for 2 years. So we're getting to that place where we've learned some lessons, and well, Scott's learned some lessons, and you know, does that beautifully and humbly, and getting to a place where now we've got the team in a good position, and then really internally and externally. So we'll be in a position to be able to do more influencing, and hopefully other organizations will follow a similar model and shape it and evolve it and improve on it.
There was one thing I forgot to say.
Go for it, Emily.
I forgot, and it's really, I'm kicking myself now because I forgot to say we've also been writing blogs about the pandemic, and some of these are on the, are they on the Seeability website as well? I know they're in the magazine.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
If you can let us have a copy of those, Emily, that would be really helpful. We can send these out via the or send the links out via the blog and our social media, the Facebook group and the Twitter group as well.
I need some help with that one, but
I'm really mindful that that one of the conversations that perhaps Carrie's about to bring up, actually, we've had in a different group with a different group of people, a different community, if you like, has been around Arnstein's ladder of participation. And you know, when that ladder of participation was published back in the late 60s, you know, it's a classic seminal text, seminal framework, but we're still talking about it, you know, 40, 50 years later. And, you know, it just echoes the frustrations perhaps that we all feel in relation to having people, you know, the word tokenistic gets talked about a hell of a lot in this kind of environment. And it's something that I think based on our choice of work and so forth, that, you know, that it's something that we want to resolve, we want to handle, we want to work with. Certainly, but it takes some challenge, and it takes a community of people to be able to make a decision like that, to be able to offer people the support and the scaffold to be able to reach those higher parts of the ladder still. But that's the structural stuff that goes along with that. Carrie, you've had your hand up for ages now. It must be getting a bit tired.
Hang on, I'll just try and get my camera back on. I just wanted to say, first of all, to Scott, Emily and Lisa, thank you very much for a really inspiring workshop. It's just so great to hear the authenticity of your work. And I do a lot of work around organisational culture and the values that are espoused and the reality of what happens to people in practice. So it's really inspirational to listen to your story. And I guess I'm setting you a positive challenge. And that is that it would be great if you could make some films to share with other organisations about what authentic values look like when you really include and value the people in your team and the influence that you can then have together. Because I think people really need to hear that as a really good case study, because otherwise people aren't going to read heavily theoretical research papers that perhaps I might write about leadership and culture, when actually you want to hear the real life stories of your experiences, Emily, Scott and Lisa. So it would be great if you could make some films. And Emily, your blogs about the pandemic, there's a lot of work out there at the moment, and stories that aren't being shared. So if there's a way that we can access your blogs, that would be really great. Because I think there'll be some really important lessons for people to learn. So that would be fantastic.
So I'll respond to that. I think it's a great idea to do films and showcase the work that we do. I think we just need to go back and think about how we do that. In terms of Emily's blogs, you can find them on our website, which is www.seeability.org. And you can, I think there's a facility there of how you can share them as well. So you can share them as well. So, I mean, we're all for making sure that sharing good practice and making sure that great culture as well. So maybe, Carrie, it might be good for you to come and have a further conversation with myself and Lisa and others to see how we can work with you on that, possibly.
I would love that. Thank you very much, Scott. I look forward to an invitation.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Teresa.
Oh. Right. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Hi. Just wanted to say welcome. I was invited this afternoon by Daniel, and he phoned me out of the blue, and he's a colleague of a trustee of mine. I just wanted to just introduce myself and just to say a few things, if that's okay. I've been really inspired by today's session and what Emily and Scott have said and everybody else, and I can see the passion that's involved here, and I'm getting quite emotional actually, because it's really touched me. I think being a parent of an adult with a learning disability is equally challenging. I did put something on the chat. Again, it's that word about fighting and challenging for our adults and our children's lives to be independent, to be heard, to be listened to within society, within the care system, being supported in supported housings, the care providers. It's really interesting actually that today's session happened today, because yesterday I was actually in a 2-hour meeting with my daughter's local authority, and I kind of, I made a complaint basically in terms of the care providers that she's been currently being supported with to try and live independently. And I just think it's an indictment, and as you say, in today's society, that we still have to challenge bad practice. We still have to challenge the way that the local authority kind of minimise our concerns, and the whole process of make a complaint. You know, I made some recommendations myself in that meeting yesterday, and you know, you say about people with learning disabilities and autism living independently, and it's about as well having the right carers care providers to support our families, to support our children, and not just doing it for the money. I mean, I've had to make a complaint on my daughter's behalf because of the pandemic. That you know, the care providers not recognizing that I should have been part of my daughter's bubble when we had the lockdown, and that resulted in my daughter having a meltdown, mental health crisis, and being prescribed antipsychotic medication. Now, I don't know if you're aware of the research and the things that are out there at the moment with people of colour, particularly people with mental health, being institutionalised and being prescribed antipsychotic medication for the sake of what I don't know. So these are my challenges. These are my fights that I've had to take on recently. And I've been successful in getting my daughter moved from a different care provider, but I had to make the local authority aware that it's a shame and it's an indictment that this is taxpayers' money, and they haven't got a clue what some of these care providers are doing or how they are, you know, treating our people with learning disabilities and autism.
Teresa,
So that's one.
Totally take all that on board. I don't think we live very far away from each other. In fact, you probably recognise the castle behind me, and you know, I share some of your experiences, but maybe we can have a quieter conversation about that on a different day.
Definitely.
I'm aware that we've got about half an hour left, and there is we've set up some community opportunity now to share some of those stories, some of those challenges, some of the things that are going well, some of the things that aren't going quite so well, and trying to build into that. What are the questions? What are the things that the community need to know about? Lisa, I've lost you. There you are. Lisa, would you like to present this? If I share my screen with the slide on it.
I'll make a start while you're loading that.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so I think really this part of the workshop, the meeting today, we wanted to create a bit of space for the community to hear from one another. So really this is about having a space for listening to each other. And we thought we'd break into some smaller groups that will be led by myself, Kathy and Carrie, to talk about, you know, the issues that we're all experiencing or working with in terms of supporting people with a learning disability to have healthy, safe and fulfilled lives. And we thought we'd do this making sure that everyone had the chance to sort of be heard today. So we'll do it in sort of 3 rounds of about a minute each, opportunity to speak. So the first round would be just to introduce yourself, say something a little bit about yourself and share something you're proud of or an achievement. We then go into a second round where you have the opportunity to maybe share a problem or concern, something that you are working on perhaps, or like Emily spoke about, just something that you want to see change for people with learning disabilities. And then we'll have a final round, a chance to you know, reply or comment on things that you've heard other people say, and you know, things that you might be thinking about taking away from what you've learnt today. Obviously, not everyone may want to sort of speak in the session. You can pass, or you can type your responses in the chat box. That's all absolutely fine. So I think that was about it. And, you know, we're trying this out and seeing how it goes today. So if it's something you like, we can do it again at other events, or we will scrap it and try another way, but we'll give it a go today.
Sounds great. So what I'll do is I'll open the rooms. Our timing is a little bit short, so if we can try and get back so that we can do a very short share by about 10:02, that's okay. So whether that works for your round, for the rounds, you might need to have a look at that. But I'm going to open the rooms now. So you should all have been invited to your rooms. Guys, I'm aware that time's moving on. Group leads, have you got any particular themes or a particular theme that you want to feed back into the main group?
Shall I go first?
Please do, Carrie.
There was a real emphasis on how we can enable people to find inclusive ways of communicating their needs and wishes, and the impact that that has on the quality of life and their behaviour and feeling included in turn when you get it right. And a real emphasis on celebrating the models that Seeability has used in particular to develop leaders to enable people to speak up. And there's a real sense of achievement there. And in terms of problems, concerns and issues, which is as far as we got, there's a real desire to find alternative means of communication. So there's a strong theme, as you can hear. So there was some discussion around using pictorial technology and mechanisms. Frances, who's a parent, had shared that there's a positive behaviour support tool. I don't know if you know about this, Daniel, which is an evidence-based tool that enables people to share experiences of what works. So there's that. And the third thing was the pandemic, that people feel that they've been left to the bottom of the pile.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Carrie. Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. So we had some real achievements. Teresa setting up her befriending services in Kent and expanding that to cover the whole of Kent. We have people in sort of different stages of their training and career, just really keen to share, learn and sort of grow together within the community of practice. So that's fantastic and really encouraging. There's been some real achievements of a less sort of conventional type, breaking some of the rules that are set to make sure people really, you know, have been able to stay in contact with friends and family during the pandemic. So that another inspiration from Seeability today. Number of sort of challenges, just for Teresa particularly, sustaining her befriending service. So she's interested in hearing from people who would like to be a trustee, anyone with skills in terms of creating podcasts and blogs, or who would like to volunteer with her. So anyone in the community is interested in that would be fantastic. I've connected with Lisa really helpfully around supporting some of our research advisors, one in particular who has lost sight recently. So I'm excited to learn more of how we can support her. And I think we've just recognised there's a sort of continual need to fight for equality, and that, you know, we've still got a long way to go, but the community can play a part in that. And to do that, we just need to continue to network, share our learnings and connect with each other. So that was really important.
Great. Thank you very much, Lisa. Kathy?
Right, sorry, I thought I was muted and I'm not. Right, okay, so strong theme in our group, I think, about education and people's experiences of that. So when we talked about claims, Ronnie said that he'd been proud to be an expert by experience for many years. And I think Ronnie, one of the first people to adopt that role. And he didn't say this, but we know that Ronnie has been immensely influential in that way. Helen talked about her training within her organisation to educate non-care staff about the needs of people with autism and/or learning disabilities, which has been quite successful. And I talked about a recent agreement I made with Kent and Medway Medical School to deliver training in learning disability alongside co-teachers and also the Tizard Centre. When it came to concerns and issues, Ronnie and I were on very similar ground in terms of being concerned about the ongoing failure to by many organisations, not all, to include people with more severe and profound learning disabilities. And Ronnie in particular identified information about the easing of lockdown, for example, not being provided to those groups of people. We acknowledge that, yes, there is a lot of easy read information out there, but there's also a lot of people who can't engage with easy read information. Helen, despite the wonderful achievement she's made at educating non-care staff, says that her organisation could be much better at co-production, and she needs to know more about that. And I think she and I found common ground there. I'm very sorry, I think I'm going to sneeze. No, I'm not, sorry. And when it came to reflections, Ronnie said that he'd learnt a lot from today. And Ronnie said something which I found just so powerful. He said, Daniel particularly, that many years ago, and I think it must have been at one of the original COP conferences, Ronnie?
It was, yes.
Yeah, on the Christchurch Medway campus. Ronnie said at that conference that he wanted learning disability to be recognised by the NHS. Today he knows that it has. So I think that's a wonderful, wonderful statement. Scott, Ronnie also identified you as his hero in terms of achievement. I saw fit, I hope you don't mind, Scott, to remind Ronnie that I think he's also achieved an awful lot. And I talked about, again, needing to develop skills in including people with more severe learning disabilities. And Helen and I agreed that we need to change systems as well as people in order to bring that about. But we also concluded that we'd all found today an immensely positive, inspiring and exciting experience.
Great, thank you. That's really, really helpful. Right. I'm aware that we've got 1 minute to go, if that. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. So it's really just to say thank you. If you did have a moment to put a one-word evaluation, so one word that would sum up today in the chat box, that would be really helpful. There will be a questionnaire hitting your inboxes in the next hour or so. Just, you know, a survey to get a feel for what you found valuable today. And the next event, Carrie is hosting the next event on the 26th of May, a person-centered workforce question mark. So we can have a workshop. That's though if you want to book places, I can certainly make sure that the link goes in the chat box today. The third event in Learning Disability Week on the 23rd of June, Ronnie is leading with his organisation Home Group on what's known as Life Swap. And relax. Okay, so I will unshare my screen and I will look forward to hopefully seeing you all again in a month's time. Thank you ever so much for being here and participating this afternoon. And
Thanks, everybody.
We'll
Thank you.
next month.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.